I wanted to talk just a teeny tiny bit about the Casey Anthony case, George Anthony, Cindy Anthony, and I want to just mention something that I read back when I was following this case, and I was looking all over the internet for anything that I could find. And I'm not talking about news stories, I'm talking about digging into any sources that had evidence that was legitimate evidence, documents, anything. Okay, my position on when somebody is accused of something that's bad or any kind of crime, I am very, very much against, and I don't care what they're accused of. I'm against the public media sensationalizing and luring our society into convicting without a trial. In our country, the divinely ordained constitutional rights are a person is innocent until proven guilty. But our society teaches against that. And the Bible says to hear the whole matter. And while I might sit here and go, oh, wow, that sure looks bad. Oh, wow. I'm like, okay, looking at what I see, what's available at the time, I may have feelings, but I'm going to tell my other part of my soul is going to say, but you know what? As a Christian, I haven't heard the whole story, so I'm not going there. Okay? So I saw some things in this case to this day has not been discussed. And I don't even know if people are aware of, to include the ex-defendant and their family. I saw something online in regards to the person who reported when found the body of this baby. What I saw was a comment that, in addition to what looked to be a garbage bag, there was also a comment about it looked to be possibly a pool cover by somebody who owned a pool that would know what a pool cover looks like. That comment disappeared from existence. It was never mentioned in the trial that I'm aware of. I haven't seen it in a single solitary interview, nothing, nada. It's just like it never happened. And maybe that was just a fluke. Maybe that was just something, a document online that wasn't anything that ever was said, but they omitted that. So here's some things that was also omitted, and here's why I have a problem with these phone records. Okay, I'm not saying that I believe everything she says. I'm not saying I disbelieve everything her father says, but what I'm saying is I'm looking at the evidence and problems with the police handling of this case. This man is a former officer. He testified after he told police. He testified in court at a very specific on-the-nose time of 12:50 that he said his daughter left the house with his granddaughter. And the problem with that is it's a lie. Phone records that they had prior to indicting her, prior to the trial, the phone records prove that that was a lie. So not only, here's my problem, not only did they have a record to prove that this man that got on the stand, prosecution witness, got on the stand and testified that his daughter left at 12:50 when they know their own evidence he was committing perjury. So you have a prosecutor who aided and abetted a crime of perjury. Because when you know that evidence concretely proves that what he said was not true, that the time frame that he said she left with her child, his granddaughter, was at 12:50, the phone records proves otherwise. That is a big, big problem. Now here's another issue that I have. Okay, so you know, when a police officer is caught in a lie, whether in an investigative procedure or even if a former police officer, an investigative procedure, a hearing, a trial, it is very, very problematic, because if that officer at any time wrote any police report in any investigation that led to somebody going to prison, that conviction becomes suspect, because you have an officer who is a liar. And now they aided and abetted this man to commit perjury in court. Why is a prosecutor not being investigated by the FBI for aiding and abetting the man to get on the stand to say that his daughter left at 12:50 with his granddaughter, when the police records that they have shows, according to this, it's not true. She did not leave at that time. And so she was not there at the house, according to the phone records of her cell phone pinging when that computer search for suffocation took place. She was not there. And they will not release his records to show whether or not he was still at the house. They are protecting him. They aided and abetted him to lie in court, to lie about the time frame. He's in a grand jury indictment saying that he's testifying for her to get the death penalty, testifying in an investigation that could lead to her getting the death penalty. Meanwhile, he's out in public originally saying it was an accident. Now, here's a big problem I have. Look, speaking of the word accident, why is it an interview done by a Dr. Oz in 2019, when Mr. Anthony was in his almost fatal accident? He's doing an interview, and he talks about forgiveness of his daughter, because earlier in another interview he had talked about he was very hot, just very angry at her, with all the allegations and so forth, and he just wanted her to stay away. But then, revisiting that conversation, when he asked about his feelings now, he said that he was willing to forgive, and he said he needed to also be forgiven for what he did. And his wife looks at him and says, forgiven for what? Now, that could have been him talking about the affairs, or, the problems, the, mistakes he made when they were growing up. There was affairs, and who knows? But we don't get a chance to evaluate that. You know why? Because the person that did that interview, I've gone to his website on YouTube. It's gone. That interview was erased, deleted. It's gone. The only interview left is the one basically putting all the blame on her. So then you have the Newsweek article that is most recent. And they too omitted that portion of George Anthony's, almost looks like a confession. It's a little sus without seeing the full interview. I'm trying to be fair here and okay, well, let's look at the full interview and see the context of what exactly he is asking for forgiveness for, what he did for. What were they talking about before he said that? But it looks like, looks like a confession, because when she turns to him and asks him, forgiven for what? And he immediately, changes the subject. Oh, he's not going to go any further. But, he's just saying enough so his daughter would think that she's going to see that, hopefully, that he will forgive her, right? Without saying exactly what it is that he needs forgiven for. People need to see that interview, right? It's what the heck? And then the funeral clip. And, with the allegations, if you don't accept that he's somebody who could possibly sexually abuse somebody, I've actually, when I think about it, I know that people say things about little kids oh, you're just so scrumptious, I just want to eat you. I mean, silly stuff like that, and just, the sweet smells of a baby. It's really, but I've never heard anybody say what he said in that funeral clip. And it was the smell of her sweat. Just, okay, that could have been innocent, but in the light of the allegations and the way his facial features when he was saying it, it made me feel uncomfortable. Yeah, I'm looking at this thing from where he lied on the stand, and he said that she was gone at such and such time, and she wasn't, and they protected him from that. And I'm looking at it from a perspective that he could possibly be guilty, and it creeps me out what he said. But here's the problem. Newsweek reports in their article about that conversation in that interview that he's willing to forgive her, and completely omits the portion where he asked to be forgiven for what he did. And Cindy turns to him and says, forgive him for what? And you go to the source of that interview, and the video was scrubbed from the internet. I have a problem with that. I'm just saying. People, please don't judge somebody. And I said this back then, and I'm sure I've got a video out there somewhere, either on this channel or another platform, where I was lamenting. I wasn't taking her side. I was just lamenting, saying, look, people, why are you out there convicting somebody who hasn't even had a trial yet? I don't care how hideous the crime is. Don't convict in your soul and your mind and your spirit until all sides are heard. You can feel like it looks bad and be angry at the trauma, the horrible thing, whatever it is that's happened. But the Bible says to hear all matter. And that is the biblical principles of the creation of our law, is that somebody is innocent until proven guilty. And it doesn't matter how horrendous, whatever it is that they've done. You are being set up by a demonically moved force that is supposed to be about, giving facts to people or sharing news or whatever. That's what our society and our country does. Our nation is known very badly about the media. And there's other countries that do the same thing, but there's a lot of countries they don't do that. And it's just wrong to convict somebody before you've heard the story. And I'm telling you now, anybody that goes out there and gets angry about something that's happened and you haven't heard both sides, if it happens to you, it's going to upset you that you're being judged without your side being heard, right? It's just wrong. Our society is being led down a bad path to convict. And it's supposed to be innocent till proven guilty. And it's just like, it's an epidemic in our nation. And I want to hear why about these phone records, when it very clearly showed he wasn't telling the truth about when she left the house he reported. And I mean, he said on the nose to the minute he knew exactly when she left, according to what he reported. And I have a problem. I have a problem with the prosecutor knowing what their own phone records say to lead this man to go on the stand and say that she left in such and such date. I have a problem with that. Now listen to this. And then there's this guy. Being a liar doesn't make somebody a murderer, he said. Really? Because that's really what they went after her for, because she was lying about a whole bunch of stuff. But it was a weird, very, very bizarre, crazy storytelling pattern that was way before anything happened to her daughter. Okay? And she did tell somebody about her being sexually abused way before anything happened to her daughter. Okay? And oh my gosh. Seriously? Being a liar doesn't make somebody a murderer, he says. And yet, he had a problem with her lying. And therefore, he convicted her in his mind because she was lying. And he just... Anyways, now listen to this. Okay, so here's the interview that has gone away on the internet. Okay? And this is... It doesn't appear that there's anything missing, but again, I don't know. Look what he says. Okay, so when Cindy turns to him and says, forgiven for what? He changes the subject. This is what I have a problem with. Look. He just changes the subject. And he doesn't answer the question. So here's the thing. Okay, here's my issue about that interview. If there was nothing sus in that interview, why did that interview get taken off of this guy's YouTube channel? Maybe it's appearing still in one of his other websites, but I went to that media source, if you will, YouTube channel, and there was nothing there. That interview was scrubbed. And I have a problem with that. Because there's other interviews that she, the wife, called him out. Said he was a liar, said he was a thief, and that their daughter got that from him. I mean, she called him out in one of the interviews, right? So here you are, this guy says he needs forgiven. And she looks at him, forgiven for what? And he wouldn't answer. Forgiven what he did. Forgiven for what he did was his exact words. And she asked him, what did you do? And he changes the subject. And that video disappears. So if anybody knows where that video is, I would love to see it. Okay. Or if you remember seeing it. At any rate, I'm just saying that there are things that his man, I believe, has been protected for. And I don't know if it's just that they had their beliefs and they truly believed what they believed because her behavior was bizarre. But when you are, I think she is consistent with a sexual abuse victim. And here's a problem, and I want to talk about that as well. Also, if it is how is it not a lie? And I'm not judging people who are sexual abuse victims. I'm a sexual abuse victim, but not by a family member. But I'm just saying, when you go through your life and you pretend, you hide, you just don't want anybody to know about what was done to you because of feelings of shame. If somebody in a household is sexually abusing a member and they pretend like it's not going on, they hide it. I'm not saying they're lying. I'm just saying, how is that not a lie? But this is what she did. So if they act like, she's abnormal for lying, and this is the way that she goes about life to cover, she's going around trying to cover up things from her mother knowing, because her mother called her a whore when she told her about the abuse from her brother, and her mother did not deny saying that. I think her mother should be denying saying that to her. Her mother knows that she told her before the death of her daughter that her brother sexually abused her. And her mother has never denied that. So she's a sexual abuse victim. So they just have ways. They have psychological issues. So why, if she's evil because she has this issue with lying way before anything happened to her daughter, she was already pretending to work somewhere else before anything happened to her daughter. Why is that evil when it's kind of like saying that all the sexual abuse victims in the whole world are somehow evil because they pretend that something's not happening that's very horrible, that needs to be reported, but they don't have the ability for various reasons to do so? It's so wrong to protect this man here.